All those who seek the glory of conquering the human lands of Midgard tremble at the mere whisper of his name. From Jotunheim to Nilfheim, great armies of frost giants and dark elves are kept at bay by the distant crackle of lightning and rumble of thunder. His name is Thor, Odin's son, god of thunder, sworn protector of the lands of Midgard, and card-carrying avenger of the highest rank. One of the most powerful and legendary beings in all the 9 realms, Thor is a staple within the Marvel pantheon of gods and heroes alike. Brandishing the awesome Mjolnir, his ancient hammer, Thor commands tremendous power from the very tips of his fingers. But get this, compared to his father, the terrible Odin, king of Asgard, even the mighty Thor looks like a quibbling child. The intense power Thor wields pales in comparison to the fearsome Odin Force, a vast wellspring of energy only the Allfather can access. Today we're going to be taking a look at what exactly the Odin Force can do. Spoiler alert, it can do a whole hell of a lot, and how Asgard's favorite son gained access to the Odin Force, and how the Marvel Universe might never be the same. So, what is the Odin Force? Excellent question, dear viewer. The Odin Force, like another famous force from pop culture, is difficult to precisely pin down. The exact level of strength, lifespan, and constitution the Odin Force bestows upon its wielder cannot be exactly calculated, for it is a force of legend without precise measurements or boundaries. But luckily, or I guess unluckily, the Marvel Universe has been threatened by many monumental existential crises over the years. From Manga to Galactus, numerous foes of the 9 realms have been so dangerous, their defeat required the Allfather to perform immense demonstrations of power and call upon the full strength of the Odin Force. By going back to these moments throughout Marvel history where the Odin Force is used in its full capacity, we can get a glimpse into the potential of this incredible well of divine magic and energy. Once, after Thor defied Odin's express orders by continuing a love affair with Jane Foster, Odin himself decided to walk among the mortals of Midgard to find his son and reprimand him. During this brief vacation abroad, the Allfather bequeathed a fraction of his power to his second son, Loki. Loki was to sit upon the throne of Asgard and watch over the kingdom until his father's return. This, of course, didn't last long, as Loki had other devious ideas. Loki used his sliver of the Odin Force to unchain vast Goliaths and Titans that Odin had been keeping locked away, and unleashed them upon the earth, hoping to defeat Odin and Thor in one swift blow. When Thor finally warns his almighty father of this plot, the king of Asgard calls upon the power of the Odin Force to teleport the entire human race to another dimension, keeping them safe and unaware of the attack on their planet. Seemingly without effort, Odin performs a breathtaking display of power at the simple wave of a hand. It's unclear whether any other being in the entire universe has such complete and total power over such a vast number of individuals. The Allfather calls upon the Odin Force in this moment to teleport an entire population, billions of people, across dimensional lines. This level of omnipotence is both incredible and terrifying. Most heavy-hitting heroes and villains on Earth are terrified to go up against Thor for fear of his godly powers. Imagine if they knew his dad once sent them and everyone they know to an alternate dimension on a whim, and they don't even remember it. But even this show of strength is relatively mundane compared to what Odin is capable of unleashing in the heat of battle. When battling an army of demons in the realms below, the mighty Odin had been seen commanding the frozen remnants of long-dead planets and sending them hurtling at his enemies. This moment right here struck me as significant because it gives us an excellent comparison between 2 power sources. Many of you likely recall the classic moment during Infinity War where Thanos uses the Power Stone to throw a moon at Iron Man. This moment stands apart as an intimidating show of strength from Thanos and proof of just how powerful the Infinity Stones are when wielded effectively. Thanos utilized the Power Stone to turn a single moon into a colossal barrage of stone and debris. Odin used the Odin Force to do the same to an entire distant planet. This comparison lets us know that however impressive the power of the Infinity Stones may be, and make no mistake, they are formidable, the Odin Force once again outshines them in terms of sheer power. Although not nearly as formidable as another of Odin's most powerful foes, whose colossal struggle against Odin marks one of the biggest fights the Marvel Universe has seen to date. But before we get into that ferocious fight, be sure to subscribe to the channel with notifications on to never miss an upload, and smash that like button for some plot armor today. But yeah, there was once a time where Odin's nigh omnipotence was relied upon by Thor to save the universe itself. While doing battle with the archdemon Surtur, Thor realized that killing the demon would cause all of the fire of creation itself to be unleashed upon the cosmos. This posed a serious problem for the god of thunder and his allies. Not engaging with Surtur would see the archdemon's plan to rule the cosmos itself come to fruition, but defeating Surtur would unleash a deafening onslaught of fire destined to burn the universe to a crisp. While Odin himself was exiled during this period, Thor and Loki called upon him at the apex of the battle. The fires unleashed when Thor struck down Surtur were wild and raging. The hellish energy unleashed would have been enough to engulf all of Asgard itself, but Odin arrived at his son's behest and channeled the firestorm to safety deep within the vast vacuum of space. When faced with certain doom, the Odin Force's magnitude and supreme power represents a get-out-of-jail-free card. One thing that Odin's power levels put in stark clarity is that there are gods, and then there are gods. Thor, for all his legendary might, is still a lowercase g god compared to the omnipotent power of the All-Father. That is, until Thor receives the Odin Force for himself, but we'll get to that later. Of all the moments from Odin's history where the Odin Force is called upon in its entirety, personally none strike more impressive than the time Odin went head-to-head with a force of nature itself. Their battle was possibly one of the most overpowered, formidable showdowns in the history of the Marvel Universe. If you remain unconvinced of the Odin Force's power, wait until you hear the tale of Odin versus the dreaded world eater himself, Galactus. The brawl centers around one particular artifact of great value to both parties, the Galactus Seed, collected by Thor from the very depths of the World Tree. Odin, in his hubris, understands the immense power the World Tree Seed represents and wishes it for himself and himself alone. Galactus, searching endlessly for worlds to consume in order to satiate his supreme cosmic hunger, understands the seed as a power source capable of ending his eternal starvation. A power source so potent it could satiate Galactus eternally, and it sits within Odin's grasp. Naturally, the two powerhouses prepare for war over the seed, with the full might of Asgard called to do battle against the World Eater and his herald, the Silver Surfer. On the eve of the battle, Lady Sif calls to Thor and asks, "Thor, how do beings like Odin and Galactus fight?" she wonders. Could one not simply turn the other into a moth trapped in a jar, or cause an inferno to erupt in his foe's skull? Thor responds, "We are but pawns on thy game board, Sif." It is telling that even the full might of the Asgardian army is practically powerless compared to the awesome might of the Odin Force. And so, Odin and Galactus engage in a great and terrible battle. Odin armed with the Odin Force and Galactus armed with his own immeasurable might as a force of the universe itself. The two titans began a brawl like the universe had never seen before, standing on opposite sides and using their omnipotent abilities to weaken each other's minds, showing each other difficult memories from their past, or giving each other memories of weakness and fear. This is a war no mortal mind can comprehend, a struggle whose engagement can only be understood by those who can see into the vast stretches of infinity itself. Odin and Galactus ferociously battle each other to a standstill, both sides unable to claim victory, until the force of their conflict explodes outward, sending both deities careening to Earth, ending the world-shattering standoff in a definitive stalemate. There are exceedingly few beings in all of creation who could stand against Galactus' crushing hunger for even mere moments, and far fewer who could live to tell the tale. Odin not only stood against Galactus, he fought the monstrous entity to a deadlock. This clash of two arch gods above all other examples gives us a true sense of how powerful the Odin Force can be. However, there is one important weakness of the Odin Force, one vulnerable gap in the armor of omnipotence provided to its wielder. When calling upon his massive and impossible powers, Odin can replete his energy and must undergo the Odin Sleep. This is a period of hibernation in which Odin must rest in order to rejuvenate his physical form and allow the Odin Force to recharge, as it were. Often, Odin prepares to undergo the Odin Sleep at certain times, and his forces stand by his bedside to protect him from all harm. It is clear from the level of preparation, as well as the intensity of his guarding during this period, that Odin considers himself at his most vulnerable during the Odin Sleep. It is also clear that while Odin is omnipotent, with dazzling and terrifying power at his command, he cannot simply will himself not to undergo the Odin Sleep when it is required. After his clash with Galactus, Odin had used up a considerable portion of the Odin Force, and his body went into the Odin Sleep automatically. While awake, Odin is the highest of gods, the king of Asgard, and an unstoppable powerhouse capable of going toe-to-toe with even the most powerful enemies the universe has to offer. But while captive in the depths of the Odin Sleep, the All-Father lies as invulnerable as any of us. But now that we know what the Odin Force is and what it does, let's take a look at Thor's moment in the sun and how the God of Thunder ascended to the throne of Asgard and claimed his birthright inheritance, the infinite power of the Odin Force. The Birth of Odin Force Thor. The story of Odin Force Thor comes from the pages of the most recent run of the character from writer Donny Cates and artist Nick Klein. It is in this arc that Thor faces a villain like he has never faced before, his own hammer. Indeed, Mjolnir itself rebels against Thor's command, first going missing and proceeding to wage a brutal one-weapon war against the Nine Realms. Mjolnir slaughters not only the mystical dwarven forge masters of Nidavellir, but the residents of Thor's beloved hometown of Broxton, Oklahoma as well. Thor is the acting king of Asgard at the time, but Odin still lives, exiled to parts unknown, as his firstborn son rules in his stead. And while Thor commands the full might of Asgard, his father still commands his share of the Odin Force. Thor attempts battle with the immensely powerful God of Hammers, a spirit that exists as both the wielder of Mjolnir and as a projection of the hammer's inner consciousness. Thor has battled many villains and taken plenty of punches, but rarely has he been on the business end of his own hammer. The fight does not go well, at all. After Thor is nearly killed by the might of Mjolnir, Odin explains in a moment of respite, "Mjolnir has always been alive, boy. I trapped the Mother Storm in it eons ago." Upon the desolate and demolished lands where once stood Broxton, Oklahoma, Thor faces his greatest threat in a lifetime, his own weapon turned against him. "You have taken me for granted. You always have." The God of Hammers yells at Thor, who holds his father's broken and bloody body in his arms, as Mjolnir promises to slay them both without mercy. The God of Thunder is understandably confused, unsure both of why his hammer has suddenly turned against him, and what he can possibly do to end Mjolnir's rampage of death and destruction. But Mjolnir's greatest secret has not yet been unleashed, for the soul of the hammer has bonded with the horrific Manga, a creature born from the Odin Force itself. Once upon a time, you see, Odin put a spell on an entire population of beings that displeased him. The Allfather collapsed a billion souls into one supremely powerful, hate-fueled entity. Thus was born the Mangog, one of Thor's most powerful foes, and the creature that had bonded to the soul of Mjolnir itself, corrupting the hammer from within. Fortunately, one of Thor's most trusted allies, Beta Ray Bill, brings together an army of Thor's friends and comrades in arms. Everyone from Reed Richards to Wolverine arrives to assist Thor in his battle against Mjolnir. Unfortunately, it is not nearly enough, and the God of Hammers wipes the floor with an entire army of superheroes. Even the combined forces of Earth seem no match for the Mangog corrupted hammer. Thor manages to encase the being in a column of earth and stone, but only for a brief moment. The God of Thunder takes a moment to sit with his father, who admits to his firstborn son, "I've been selfish. The Odin Force. Boy, it cannot be given in full until I am gone." Ignoring his son's pleas not to leave him, Odin allows himself to be taken by the afterlife, and in a flash of light, the Odin Force is bestowed in full onto the King of Asgard, and Odin Force Thor is born. This is an extremely significant moment in the history of Thor's relationship with his father. Mjolnir had always served as intrinsic proof that Thor was worthy of his powerful station, but Thor's allegiance to Midgard had often caused Odin to question Thor's ability to rule. Odin, lying helpless on the battlefield, sees his son fighting against the very instrument that had so long served as conclusive evidence of Thor's character. In that moment, the Allfather finally places his faith in Thor and accepts his own fate in order to bestow upon his son an even greater power than Mjolnir ever possessed, a power worthy of a king of Asgard. Now, though Thor is no longer worthy of Mjolnir's standards, he knows that he is worthy by his father's. Anointed with the full cosmic might of the Odin Force and absolutely pissed about the death of his father, Thor strikes back against the God of Hammers with more force and power than he has ever wielded before. Wielding the Odin Force against the corrupted Mother Storm born from his hammer, Thor is able to cage the beast, transports the threat away from the vulnerable lands of Midgard to the Forge of Nidavellir, and promises, "This is where you will die." And kill it he does. Thor smashes his mighty hammer Mjolnir into the ground again and again, with all the strength of the Odin Force behind his every swing. The hammer cracks further and further until finally, the hammer Mjolnir, the ultimate proof of Thor's worth as a hero, smashes across the floor and is no more. After destroying his hammer, taking the Mangog and the God of Hammers with it, Thor, the All-Father, collapses to the ground and enters the Odin sleep, having channeled immense power from the Odin Force to achieve his victory. What comes next? So Thor has the Odin Force now. What happens now? What changes? Well, my friends, that is entirely up to our good old pal Thor. And I mean that literally. Thor now has access to an unfathomable reservoir of magic. Whatever comes next for him and for Asgard is entirely up to the God of Thunder. The world certainly becomes your oyster when you have the power to turn the whole world into, well, an oyster. And with that in mind, let's see what hypothetical hijinks we can cook up now that everyone's favorite mystical hero has the entirety of the Odin Force at his beck and call. During the battle of Odin against Galactus, Thor considers that omnipotence has its downsides. In the heat of battle, he may not have known just how right he was. But now that Thor commands the full strength of the Odin Force, it is likely he will be familiarized with those downsides sooner rather than later. Temptation is probably the biggest downside omnipotence affords its users. With the power to do or change anything you'd like, what would you change? Thor has certainly lost many friends, lovers, and family members over the years. Would the God of Thunder attempt to use his newfound power to save those loved ones from the afterlife? The unintended consequences of meddling in affairs that are better left alone can be severe. And even those with the powers of the Odin Force can be victims of their own attempts to fix the mistakes they have made. Thor is a hero who feels great loyalty and devotion to those he breaks bread with. It is not out of the realm of possibility that this otherwise admirable quality will come back to bite the God of Thunder now that he has access to this all-powerful force. There is another, even more personal downside to Thor being gifted the Odin Force. Thor's allegiance to humanity has historically torn his loyalty between Asgard and Midgard, much to his father's chagrin. Now, given that Thor not only reigns supreme as a king of Asgard, but also possesses the mighty Odin Force, it is unlikely he will have the time to visit his beloved home away from home. Thor being absent from the affairs of Earth has many implications. Firstly, this means that the Avengers are down one of their most powerful members. This is possibly a moot point, however, since it is impossible to imagine Thor allowing Midgard to fall while he possesses the power of the All-Father. So while the Avengers may have lost a founding member, the Earth itself has gained a powerful defender above. The other consequence of Thor's likely absence from Midgard is more emotional and likely more important. Midgard has long served as a grounding point for Thor's humanity and helped keep in perspective the godly affairs of his home of Asgard. This had long been a point of contention between Thor and Odin. Odin believed that to be a great king to Asgard meant leaving the affairs of mortals behind, and Thor always held strongly to the lives of mortals and saw them not as less than, but treated them as equals. Without the ability to visit his favorite realm, Thor could find himself falling into the ways of thinking his father favored. Given his passionate love affair with Jane Foster, as well as many of his best friends being mortal, I'll allow that this may seem unlikely, but there is no way of truly knowing what prolonged time away from Earth will do to Thor's temperament or worldview. Yet of course, with downsides must come another side of the coin. One fairly large positive is that many enemies Thor once nearly fell in battle to are now completely outclassed by the powers he has access to now. Longtime adversaries such as the Enchantress, the Executioner, even the Dread Malekith now pale in comparison to Thor's mighty power. The Odin Force offers omnipotent power, but as such comes with many responsibilities, something a certain spider-based vigilante would certainly agree with. Of course, there are still dangers posed even to those as powerful as the All-Father. But with access to the Odin Force, it is hard to see Thor having a difficult time keeping most of his past adversaries at bay. Perhaps Thor's rogues gallery will simply quiet down as a result of the God of Thunder's new powers, but considering the precarious nature, that seems highly unlikely. Odin commanded respect and fear across the 9 realms in part due to his ancient rule and his merciless judgments. Thor is famous for neither of those, and it is possible with his ascension to the throne, many ne'er-do-wells across the cosmos sense a newfound weakness upon the royal throne of Asgard. But whatever Thor decides to do with the Odin Force, it is assured that there are forces operating in the dark all around him, seeking to manipulate the new All-Father to their own ends, or usurp his throne altogether. Well folks, there you have it. Odin Force Thor is here and he is more godly than ever. We really hope you guys enjoyed the video and are excited to see where Odin Force Thor goes next, as we definitely are. I have been Slice of Otaku of Plot Armor Comics. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.